The Pats look to recover from giving a game away last week while the Panthers try to build off a 30-0 takedown of the Falcons. He's Julian Council. I'm Nick Cattles. And this is a crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening? I am your host, Nick Cattles, Locked On Patriots, of course, and today I'm joined by the host of Locked On Panthers, Julian Council, for the latest edition of our Locked On crossovers during this 2025 NFL season. And on this week's crossover show, we'll tell you which matchups matter the most on Sunday. Also, you do not want to miss our 3 keys to victory coming up later. But first, it's all about the headlines. We'll get to the biggest story of the week for each side. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast and Locked On Panthers podcasts are proud partners of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as you watch us both, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Julian, what's up, my man? How you doing?
Doing well, Nick. Doing well. Ready for this week 4 matchup between two teams at 1-2. One team, Carolina, coming off of, a big-time victory, winning 30-0 against their division rival Atlanta. Then the Patriots, of course, coming off of, I think, probably a disappointing Sunday with those 5 turnovers against a certainly beatable Steelers team. Should be a fun one as both of these teams try to get to 500 this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how many people expected the Panthers to beat the Falcons, especially by a score of 30-0. But that's exactly what they did. Let me first ask you, off that win against Atlanta at home last weekend, what is the biggest story this week in Carolina?
Yeah, biggest story is injuries right now, and in particular, injuries to just the pass catchers that they have here in Carolina. Looking on Wednesday, Tet McMillan, who's been a sensation for them, the 8th overall pick in the 2025 draft out of Arizona, he was out of practice with a calf injury, and that is something that's concerning because Xavier Legette, their first-round pick from last year, he missed last week because of a hamstring and also was not out there at practice. They lost TreVeyon Sanders, their second-year pass-catching tight end, with an ankle injury on Sunday. He's out for the next couple of weeks, at least be a week-to-week deal with a high ankle sprain. And then Jalen Coker, their second-year receiver, he's out with a quad injury, going to miss again on Sunday because he's on IR to start off the season, so he's not eligible to come back until potentially next week, where he will not be back. So you're missing your top 4 pass catchers right now, at least looking at it heading into Thursday's practice. We'll see what the availability is for McMillan and Legette when that status is actually known on Friday. And then if those guys are able to play on Sunday. Dave Canales, Panthers head coach, didn't make it seem it was that serious with McMillan. It's just something they want to monitor early on in the week. So we'll see. I figure he'll probably be good, but if he's not, and if Legette can't go, and of course Sanders and Coker aren't going to play, then it's down to Hunter Renfrow, David Moore, Bryson Tremaine, Jimmy Horn Jr., and Dale Von Campbell, and whoever they may elevate to the practice squad. So, not ideal if that's what's going to be happening. So, the injuries to the pass catchers, that is certainly the story at this point in time in the week.
Julian, correct me if I'm wrong, man. I was watching, and I'll get to the biggest storyline for the Patriots here in a minute, but I was watching that game against the Falcons, and it just feels to me like there's a lack of explosiveness for this Panthers offense aside from Tet McMillan. Is that what you've seen? Is there that lack of explosivity down the field aside from the rookie?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he has been their guy so far this season. Hunter Renfrow did have a pair of touchdown receptions in week 2 at Arizona during the Panthers' comeback attempt, but they have not had a lot of explosive plays. And that's the thing about the victory on Sunday. The offense didn't really play all that well. They were able to capitalize on the opening drive of that game, driving it down, I think, 68 yards. And after that, they didn't really have any long, sustained drives. They were able to cash in a Mike Jackson interception to 7 points later on there in that game, but it wasn't like they were going up and down the field and doing a ton. So I think there's a little bit of concern just about what they have outside of McMillan, especially because Legette has not impressed in the first 2 games this season. And even last year left a lot to be desired. And now if McMillan doesn't play, like, what is your passing game if you don't have him? Because he is the one guy that can give you some explosive plays.
Yeah, Michael Penix was brutal last week. I watched that game. I could not believe how badly he played. Well, you know, Tet McMillan, Xavier Legette, those guys might be out in Carolina, can't do much about it if it's just an injury situation. The biggest story, I think, this week for the Patriots. And I could save Christian Gonzalez for a little bit later because I talked about him last week with Chris Carter on the crossover. But it's really about the running back position because last week, as you said, Julian, the Patriots just gave the game away to Pittsburgh. They dominated that game. If you look at every single statistic, Pittsburgh had 1 first down between the second and third quarters offensively, and they were able to move the ball up and down the field all day long, but it was the fumbles and the turnovers. Ramondre Stevenson, 2 fumbles, including one at the half-yard line. Antonio Gibson replaces Stevenson during the game at running back, and he fumbles the football. So the biggest question right now is who's going to be running back 1? And TreVeyon Henderson apparently, reportedly, began drills today at the position, but TreVeyon Henderson has gotten off to a very, very slow start. He had 3 flags thrown against him against Miami. He has struggled in pass protection. He's running into piles. He's not really seeing the field great. So a very slow start. So I'm not really sure who is going to be able to run the football or who the Patriots want to run the football on Sunday against the Panthers.
Well, we know how Belichick would handle it. Anybody who fumbles, they're off, and they're not coming back the next week. And Vrabel, of course, comes from that Belichick tree, his own man, and he's done it well, especially down there in Tennessee when he had, Derrick Henry, which is kind of hard not to have a great running game when you have Derrick Henry, but he's not had those guys. And that is so interesting to me because I was watching, I think ESPN earlier this week was talking about, like, where is TreVeyon Henderson out there for New England? And, like, he was outstanding at Ohio State. But also, I guess we have to understand that when you're at Ohio State, you're at such a severe talent advantage, especially in the Big Ten, to where you're going to always have those holes, which were open, especially during that national title run last year. Now with the Patriots offensive line, which I know has been rebuilt this offseason, maybe he's having to learn more of how to play the position at this level. Is just not up to speed at this point in time. But I would think eventually, like, he's going to be the guy for New England, right?
I mean, I think he will end up being one of the guys. The one thing about TreVeyon is you don't want to give him the brunt of the action. And they learned that in college at Ohio State. He had his best season when Judkins came in, and they were able to pretty much split. So I don't think he's a full-time kind of bell cow back. He's not the biggest guy. So I think you've got to watch the amount of touches that he gets. I was thinking 10 to 15 a week, and I still think he'll get there. And I do think that he will have an impact. He had a tremendous camp. He was arguably the best offensive player throughout camp for the Patriots. So the fact that he's off to this slow start, I just think the game is playing a little bit fast for him right now. He's going to slow things down, and the question is how long that will take. Another story is Christian Gonzalez. I will tell you, he sounds like he's ready to return this week. He said today to the media that he wanted to come back last weekend. Mike Vrabel said that they were protecting the player last weekend, but he did want to come back. So it looks like Christian Gonzalez will be playing this weekend. The question is, how much will he play? How about you guys? You got another big story you want to toss out there?
Yeah, I think right now it's just about, can the Panthers continue to play the way they played defensively so far this season? Last year and the year prior was not the standard that people had become accustomed to in the 30-plus years of Carolina Panther football. Last season, having the worst scoring defense in the history of the NFL. Granted, it was a 17-game schedule, but it didn't really matter. It was awful. And they went out this offseason. They spent money on Bobby Brown III from the Rams. They also went out there and brought Trevon Merrick over from the Raiders. They spent money on Patrick Jones II to come over from Minnesota. Like, they spent some pretty, and Turk Wharton also from Kansas City. Like, they were trying to fix what this run defense was, but what this defense was overall. And not having Derrick Brown last year outside of the opening week game against New Orleans, where they didn't get a single defensive stop in that game, mind you. That did not help matters. But so far this season, at least the last 6 quarters, since they allowed an opening drive touchdown there in the third quarter against Arizona, coming out of the half in week 2, they pitched a shutout. And Michael Penix Jr. was awful on Sunday. I think a lot of that was just him, but Carolina obviously took advantage and clearly must have confused him in some manner. They have not gotten a ton of pressure at all this season. They're actually last. I'm looking over at PFS pressure percentage. Thanks to our friends over at True Media for that stat. But they've been solid right now, 7th in DVOA. An EPA rather, and in 9th, and then they have a number 9th, I think, is success rate defensively. So can they continue on that trajectory where they're, at least in some statistical categories, a top 10 defense? Look at total defense is 21st. I don't really care about that. That's yardage. Scoring defense, they're 8th. Like, that's what actually matters. They're 7th in red zone defense. So they've been through 3 weeks, but really like the last 6 quarters or 5.5 quarters, they've been pretty solid. Can that carry over this Sunday against a still young quarterback in Drake Maye, who I like a lot, Charlotte guy, Tar Heel, so always be a Drake Maye fan. But Drake has made some mistakes, including last week, where I saw Vrabel said those turnovers, those are on Drake. And if he's not getting help from his running backs, also putting the ball on the ground, Carolina's got to take advantage like they did last week against Michael Penix Jr. in the Atlanta Falcons offense.
Yeah, from what I see out of Carolina, good competitive secondary. JC Horn's very good. And, I look at Derek Brown, dude's a beast. That's somebody that just buries offensive linemen for a living. So there are some talented cats on that side of the football. Every single week, by the way, there are matchups that swing games. Up next, Julie and I will tell you which matchup this week stands out the most. It's a Locked On Patriots and Panthers crossover. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. I'm talking player props, building a same-game parlay, which I love, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Hanging out with buddies on a Sunday with FanDuel open, checking out all those options, it doesn't get any better. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sunday. So right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I ask you again, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. When you think game day, you might not think Wayfair, but you should, because Wayfair is the best kept secret for incredible and affordable game day finds. Wayfair has everything you need to get your space ready for the season, whether you're tailgating outdoors or cheering from your living room. If you want to level up your game day setup, check out the grills, the coolers, and recliners over at Wayfair. Here's what's great about the Wayfair selection. Wayfair has unique finds and options for every budget, so you can show off your team spirit without overspending. Delivery, it's free, fast, hassle-free, a lifesaver when you need something in time for kickoff. From outdoor essentials like folding chairs and patio heaters to indoor must-haves like TV stands and serveware, Wayfair has it all in one place. Wayfair is your trusted destination for all things game day, from coolers and grills to recliners and slow cookers. Shop, save, and score today at Wayfair.com. That's Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Julian Council, Nick Cattles with you here. Locked On Patriots, Locked On Panthers crossover episode, getting all of you ready for the Week 4 matchup between the Panthers and Patriots. Two teams that really had their talent questioned all offseason. Two teams that went into the offseason, Julian, with a focus on just getting talent, frankly, even to the point where both teams were looking at the same guy in Milton Williams. Looking at this game coming up on Sunday, give me a marquee matchup that you're really focused on.
Yeah, and the whole Milton Williams thing, I think Carolina thought they had that one in the bag. And then
I think New England thought they had it in the bag too. Thinking Carolina had it in the bag, by the way, not they themselves had it in the bag.
Yeah, and I think the whole paying him more than what you're paying Derek Brown would have not really sat right with the organization. Also kind of insane considering like what Milton Williams has done, which has been a lot of good things. But I mean, come on, let's be real here. Right. But yeah, as far as the matchup I'm looking at in this game, it's the Panthers rushing offense versus the Patriots rushing defense. If Bryce Young's going to be without Tet McMillan and have Xavier Legette out for a second week, there's going to be no JT Sanders, of course, no Jalen Coker, and he's having to rely on David Moore and Hunter Renfrow and Bryson Tremaine as his top three. Then they're going to have to run the damn ball and be able to move some furniture with the offensive line, which for the second week in a row will be without their starting right guard, Robert Hunt, who's likely out for the season with a torn biceps, and then Austin Corbett, who's out for at least the time being with a grade 3 MCL sprain. So Cade Mays and Charles Zavala are there at center and right guard, respectively. But looking at the Patriots defense, they've been pretty solid so far this season, albeit only through 3 weeks. They're 9th in EPA against the run. They're 8th in success rate against the run. Looking at ESPN, they have their run stop win rate stat. They're 2nd. You look at Harold Landry and Milton Williams, respectively. Both those guys are top 10 in run stop win rate at their positions. Well, the Panthers haven't really been that dedicated to run the ball, it feels like, this season. They did run it to a good amount on Sunday. That was one area offensively where they actually were pretty successful, where Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle for the first time this season combined for 100 yards on the ground together. The Panthers only 17th in rushing success rate at this point in time, but 6th in run block win rate. So that's going to be a matchup when looking at the Panthers offensive line, just run game in general versus the Patriots rushing defense. They're going to take the pressure off of Bryce if he's going to be without some of his top pass catchers this Sunday.
To me, it begins and ends with Tet McMillan. And just for the sake of argument here, let's say he is out there. And if you got McMillan out there, it's going to be either Carlton Davis or Christian Gonzalez going to be manning up against him. And Carlton Davis did a good job against DK Metcalf last week. He gave up a touchdown, but Metcalf pretty much mossed him in the end zone. It was a good throw by Aaron Rodgers, and Metcalf just went up and got it and was just a bigger dude, more athletic guy. Carlton Davis has had a very good season so far. He's been really good, especially given the fact that he's playing a role that he wasn't supposed to be playing. He's supposed to be outside corner too, and he's looked at as the guy right now. The biggest issue for the Patriots defense has been giving up big plays, and they gave up some big plays last week. They gave up big plays against Miami. They gave up 9 plays of 20-plus yards against the Raiders in week 1. So they've got to make sure that they limit those big plays, but I do think they'll be able to slow down the run game of Carolina, because as you've mentioned, they've been solid against the run. Interestingly enough, they started 2 high safety last week against Pittsburgh for no reason. Yeah. And Pittsburgh decided to run the football right down their throat, and they changed that. They put a safety close to the line of scrimmage, and they just completely shut down the Pittsburgh run game after that. So they've gotten off to some slow starts defensively, especially against the run, but they've been able to figure it out rather quickly. For me, I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, that the Hunter Henry versus linebackers safety combination. I'm telling you right now, if Carolina can slow down Hunter Henry, and by the way, he's dinged up. He was at practice today, but he was a little dinged up in that game on Sunday with the left leg situation. But Hunter Henry has to play well, because if Hunter Henry doesn't play well, I don't know what this pass offense is for the Patriots right now with the weapons. Maye's been good, but I don't know what you have at receiver if you don't have Hunter Henry consistently causing some problems, especially against this secondary of Carolina.
Yeah, I'm disappointed just as a Carolina guy that New England still has not put anything around Drake Maye. Obviously, Jalen Polk, that did not work out. And I kind of think back to, there's that one video where I saw some people nationally pick it up. It's like, oh, look at the leadership of Drake Maye when they were just running, I think, during like rookie minicamp. And Drake's like, hey, I'm going to run. Well, I need you to run too. And like Polk was kind of was not doing that. It's like, well, that's the red flag right there. Loved him back in Washington. Obviously did not work out. He's now down in New Orleans rather. So hoping eventually that the Patriots get something around Drake. Great that Mike Vrabel's there. But the fact that you brought up Hunter Henry, I think is actually a great point, because the Panthers defensively have not done a great job against tight ends, except for Kyle Pitts, which, go figure, because what has he done at this point in time in his career? Yeah. So also waiting on Kyle Pitts to break out and be that guy. But week 1, week 2, they really struggled. And the guys that you have to point to who have been just awful in coverage have been Christian Roseboom, their linebacker, and then TreVeyon Merrick, who actually came over to be someone who could really help them stop the run, but has not been great in coverage, especially against tight ends. So far this season, according to PFF, Roseboom has a 31.7 coverage grade, and then Merrick has a 46.0. Like, those guys have just not been great. And Merrick has been targeted 14 times. He's allowed 13 receptions for 116 yards. Roseboom been targeted 14 times, allowed 11 receptions for 143 yards. So that's going to have to be an area that cleans up, especially when you look at, again, what New England has, and it's not much at wide receiver, and J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson. And J.C. was telling me after the game on Sunday, he feels like they have an underrated unit. Those two, Shaw Smith-Wade, the second year nickel for them, had an interception, that pick 6 on Sunday that closed out the game against Atlanta. The Nick Scott has been fine back there at safety, and then of course Mary as well, but those corners have been really solid. So they're gonna have to watch out for Hunter Henry and win that matchup, or at least not allow that to be something that kills them like it did in week 2 and in week 1 against Arizona and Jacksonville respectively.
Yeah, I mean, you said it in the first segment here. Look, Drake Maye overall has been really good. If you look at the EPA statistics, which you've thrown out a few times during this episode, he is an EPA darling right now. He's like number 1 in EPA in late downs. He's number 8, I think, overall in EPA per play. He's been really good. I just saw today, when you look at the EPA adjusted, I think he's 8th overall in the NFL. But as you mentioned, there's the but, right? And I'm a Drake Maye guy. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's absolutely improved unequivocally. He's a better quarterback right now than he was last year. And, I think he's going to eventually get there. But it is, oh, man, if it just wasn't for that turnover, if it wasn't just for that one, decision or questionable throw, if he gets rid of some of that or most of that, I mean, I think that the ceiling is so high for Drake Maye. And I think that's a good thing for the Patriots because, as you said, they haven't given him a bunch of great weapons, and he's still improving, and he's still, getting the most, I think, out of the guys that he has.
Yeah.
And he's working in a new offensive system with Josh McDaniels as well. So I think he's had a lot pretty much against him, and I think all in all, he's done a good job. So we'll see what Drake does on Sunday against the Panthers.
And let me say this too about Drake. Like,
Sure.
he is a guy who has never had a perfect situation, if we're being honest, even back to college at North Carolina. The offensive line was a disaster his 2 seasons as the starting quarterback there. He had to learn a new offense in his final year in Chapel Hill with Phil Longo going to Wisconsin, then Chip Lindsey coming over to be his OC, and his numbers weren't nearly the same as they were the year prior. He had Josh Downs, which was great for him his first year, had Amarion Hampton those 2 seasons. So you look at those 2 guys, love Stephon Diggs, what he's been. Is there a receiver better than Josh Downs in New England right now? Omarion's gotten to a decent start so far in LA with the Chargers, but has anyone stood up at this point in time and announced himself that running back? So he's used to not having perfect situations, which I felt like, okay, going to New England, maybe he'll be all right. But eventually, like, obviously you're going to get him some better weapons on the outside, and they did start working on what they have out there on the offensive line. Will Campbell, like what he's done so far. So really interesting because I'm a guy who always checking out to see how Drake plays and how things going on in New England. But yeah, you guys got a good one. Just, of course, he's got to get rid of some of the stupid stuff, which he obviously did back in Chapel Hill as well.
Yeah, I mean, 4 different offensive coordinators the last 4 seasons playing football.
Yeah.
He's been dealt a pretty tough hand. And, I do think Kayshon Boutte is better than people know. They've been playing 2 tight end sets an awful lot. Now, I'm not telling you anybody scares you in the room. Nobody does.
No.
But I do think, Stephon Diggs after the ACL, I'm going to give him some grace here. I'm going to give him, 7-8 weeks to see if he can get a little bit more juice to his game. He's come up with some big catches on 3rd and 4th down. That's what I will say. I mean, he's not crushing it in statistics in any kind of category. But when they've needed a big play, he's had 3 or 4 of those catches, 3rd and 8. He had a 4th down conversion in Miami. So he has helped them in bigger moments, but they've got to get more. And I do wonder if you'll see maybe a little bit more of Kyle Williams this weekend, or maybe even Efton Chisholm gets activated, because Pop Douglas, who had a fantastic camp, he has just not brushed up on the details. He's been very inconsistent. And the rapport between he and Maye has just been off since day one. Can't figure it out. Not sure. So we'll see if they change some things around. All right, we got 3 keys. 3 keys to keep an eye on this Sunday next as we continue with today's crossover episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest. Getting tickets can be a hassle between queues and login screens and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time, it's fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price, plus all fees are included. So the price that you see is the price that you actually pay. How nice is that? I pulled up Game Time, just a couple taps. You see amazing deals. Talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Look, for those people watching this episode on YouTube, I just want to personally apologize for my collar during those reads. I don't know what happened. It forced me to change my shirt. It was a disaster. I understand the mess. I'm going to fix the mess. But yeah, I know. And if you didn't pay attention because you skipped through the ads, if you want to laugh at me, just go back and watch 5 seconds of it. It is a disaster. Julian Council, Nick Cattles with you here. Locked On Patriots, Locked On Panthers crossover episode. We're not going to give you the predictions, okay? We don't do the predictions in the final segment here. We're going to wait until the last episode of the week to give you our official prediction for this game. But Julian, we are going to give the 3 keys to all the people listening and watching. So let's start with your first key.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's take care of the football, because you look at New England, you look at Carolina so far. New England has a -3 turnover differential, 26th in the league, at least tied for 26th in the league, while Carolina is at a -1. So far this season, the only game the Panthers have won was when they won the turnover margin, and that was on Sunday, where they got 3 turnovers or 3 takeaways against Atlanta, had that 1 muff punt, but they're 0-2 in the other games where they spotted their opponents 10 points, 10 to Jacksonville, 10 to Arizona. So that is the top key for me. Take care of the football, which you could bring up as a key every single week. But looking at these 2 teams in particular, when New England, the one game they didn't turn the ball over, they won on the road against Miami. So both these teams have shot themselves in the foot at different times so far this season to start out. And if Carolina can take care of the ball, they're going to be well on their way to having a chance to win this game on the road.
All right, I'll take that point from you, and I will double down with the Patriots, because that was actually my first key, is take care of the ball after you turned it over 5 times last week against Pittsburgh. But I will say this, the overall operation, clean things up. You know, I thought, Julian, when the Patriots hired Mike Vrabel, I said this during the hiring, I said it before the hiring, I wanted Mike Vrabel to be the hire before they promoted Drake Maye. I, of course, did not know that was an inside deal, and it was already decided that Drake Maye was going to be the guy. But I thought this was going to be a serious football program with Mike Vrabel. And what I mean by that is disciplined, detailed, make sure you take care of the football. And frankly, through the first 3 weeks, that's been underwhelming. Slow starts for this team, especially in the first quarter. A lot of penalty flags, a lot of turnovers. The discipline is just not there. Slim margin for error with this team. So no gifts to the Panthers on Sunday. Please, just stop shooting yourself in the foot. What's your second key?
Yeah, second key for me is find a way to run the ball. They really haven't done it to that well of a clip, not that high of a clip so far this season, as far as like they didn't really run it a ton week 1 or in week 2 when they were behind. And when you have a guy like Chuba Hubbard, who was excellent last year, he's 5th in success rate among running backs who had at least 200 plus carries. And then you have Rico Dowdle, who was 6th in success rate among running backs who also had 200 plus carries. You would think you'd want to run those guys a little bit more, and they're both coming off 1,000-yard rushing season. So there's a lot of people who are hoping that maybe this could be a smash and dash double trouble part 2, like they used to have with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart back in the day. And that has not necessarily happened so far. So this week, especially if you're going to be down your top pass catchers, got to find a way to run the ball, control the clock on the road there in New England.
I want to talk about the big guys up front for my second key. I'm talking interior defensive line versus interior offensive line. Everybody's going to talk about Milton Williams. And by the way, he was great the first 2 weeks. He was not as good last week. That could be a little bit of the Steelers just getting rid of the football quickly and what they did offensively. But Williams was really good the first 2 weeks. Christian Barmore has been up and down, kind of expected after last year in the blood clots. But the name I want to put all the Panthers fans on is Khyiris Tonga. Khyiris Tonga is, I will tell you, a revelation for this defense. He was the best defensive player for this team last week. I think he's going to get more snaps. He's been good against the run. He has been really good against the pass. And I look at Cade Mays. I look at Chandler Zavala, your backup center, backup right guard. For the Patriots fans that might not know who those two guys are. And I think if the Patriots can take advantage of that between Williams, Barmore, and Tonga, that's going to make life miserable for Bryce Young and the running backs. The Patriots need to win that matchup on Sunday between the interiors. They need their interior defensive linemen to play really well. What's your final key?
Yeah, final key is going to be win on special teams. I know we always focus on what you do offensively, defensively, but Carolina had a decided advantage on special teams on Sunday in that one against Atlanta. Ryan Fitzgerald, their rookie kicker from Florida State, has been perfect so far on the season, had a 57-yarder on Sunday in that win. And also his kickoffs, he's been doing some sort of knuckleball kickoff, which Atlanta could not field multiple times on Sunday. And that could be a decided advantage, especially in this new dynamic kickoff that they have in the NFL, where sure, there's more returns, but where are guys going other than to a wall 10 yards in front of them? Nowhere. So yeah, I guess it's having the intended effect, but really not doing anything to change the game. But maybe for Carolina, like they did last week where Atlanta couldn't pick up the ball, that puts New England, like the Falcons, back on their 15 or their 10-yard line, and that can help you out as far as having that offense pinned back, and your defense could be aggressive and force a mistake like they did last week with that pick six with Michael Penix really just throwing a bad ball in that situation. So yeah, winning on special teams, that would be my final key for Carolina.
It's a great point by you. I mean, Andy Borregales settled down a little bit the last couple of weeks, but he's been shaky, missed a couple of extra points, missed a field goal. And the Patriots got a couple of good returns the first couple weeks, including a touchdown kickoff return by Antonio Gibson. But last weekend against Pittsburgh, they really struggled. Their return units were not good at all. They got like nothing. They were starting at the 20, 21-yard line all day long. And Mike Vrabel said with the media on Wednesday, he told the media that he sat on Tuesday night and watched the Panthers kickoff coverage and kickoffs for 2 straight hours. He sat there and spent 2 hours watching special teams. So he apparently agrees with you, Julian Council, that it's a big deal this weekend. I would say, you mentioned the run game for Carolina. I think it's the same thing with the Patriots. Can the running backs take advantage of some of that Carolina run defense? They are 25th in EPA per rush, 30th in yards per play. Run away from Derek Brown. Do not run towards Derek Brown. And Drake Maye scrambles, all those extra yards, those conversions, they stack up. And he's been fantastic for the most part, aside from the fumble last week. There's that but again. He's been really good running the football, scrambling for 10, 15, 18 yards. So run game. I would say run game. All right, that wraps up this crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Panthers. Thank you for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Hit that like button and subscribe. And for your second listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler, the Madman Rowland, and Tony Wiggins. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Panthers fans, Patriots fans, have a great day. And Julian and I will see you tomorrow.